Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah. So, what was the last discussion, and do you have any question?
We agreed that.
Last discussion was on how to send data child to parent and siblings.
Okay.
We don't have any questions.
Okay. Today, we will start with a new topic called component lifecycle hooks. Component lifecycle
Only one
hooks.
question.
Yes.
There are one more type that we can share the data with two components using
Yeah,
this.
that will be discussed later.
Okay, no issue.
Yeah. So the next topic I'm going to discuss is component lifecycle hooks. What is component lifecycle hook? We can call them as hook. We can call them as method. Anything is fine. People say component lifecycle hooks or people say component lifecycle methods. Anything is fine. These two are synonyms. Okay. So what is component lifecycle hooks and why they are called lifecycle hooks? So there are couple of methods. There are a couple of methods in Angular. They will be automatically called even if we don't call them. When a component loads, there are 9 functions. They will be called anyhow, even if we don't call them, they will be called. What are those 9 functions? One is constructor, ng on changes, ng
Hello.
Hello, Sanjay.
Yeah, we voice is not visible coming.
Hello. Sanjay, your voice is not coming.
I think we lost him.
Okay.
Yeah, he will reconnect. Let us wait.
Okay, no issue.
So
Yes, we lost.
we lost Sunday মারা গেছে আজ সকালে লাইফ সাইকেল লোকটা বললাম আর আমাদের জিজ্ঞাসা বললো না
hello, I'm audible.
Now is
yes
available.
sir you are audible
Okay, okay. I think I got disconnected for a second. Hope my screen is also visible, right?
yes
Yes, sir, visible.
Yeah, fine. So, what I was saying is there are couple of methods which will be called automatically for every component, even we even if we don't call them. And those methods are these. These are the methods which will be automatically called for every component, even if we don't call them. That is why they have a special name called lifecycle methods. Okay, I'll show you one example. Suppose we have parent component.ts. In parent component.ts, I have a function f1. Do you think this f1 function will be called automatically if I don't trigger any event?
no
There is a function called receive name. Do you think this function will be called automatically if I don't trigger any
no
event? No.
No, sir.
But there are few events. There are few functions. Constructor, we will never invoke constructor. It will be automatically called. ng on init. This is also a function. As a developer, we will not call. These are the functions. In this file, we have only two, but there are nine functions which will be automatically called even if we don't call them. That is why they are called lifecycle methods. Hmm. In our, as a human being, we also go through different stages during our lifetime. Yes or no? What are the what are the stages we going through during our lifetime as a human being? What are the stages?
Child stage.
First born, then child,
First newborn baby,
newborn
then
baby, then some changes happens to that.
Child.
So he
then
grows up.
toddler, we can say,
Yeah, yeah.
then child,
Child,
then
teenager,
uh, teenage,
Teen.
then young age,
Young
then
age.
And
then old man, then die.
ha. So these are the stages every human being has to go through, right? Isn't it?
yes,
The same way, every component has to go through set of stages one after other. So for every component, a constructor will be called, ng on changes will be called, ng on init will be called. So for every component, all these functions will be called. And how many functions are there? 1 plus 8. Why 1 plus 8? 1 is constructor and 8 lifecycle methods. Constructor is not considered as a lifecycle method. Why? Because it is not from Angular. Constructor is from TypeScript and other 8 functions are from Angular. That is why we say there are 1 plus 8 lifecycle methods. There are 1 plus 8 lifecycle methods. 1 plus 8 means 1 is constructor from TypeScript. 8 are from Angular. These functions will be called for every component. So till today, we never tried to understand whether these functions are being called or not. But today we will see how these functions are being called for every component and why they are being called. And when they are being called, what is the benefit that we get? We will understand all these things today. Any questions so far or we are good?
No.
Here comes.
We are good. Okay. Now let me do one thing. Let me do one thing. Let me add let me add all these functions. Let me add all these functions in my component. I'll add 9 functions in my component parent component.ts. I have constructor, ng on init, ng on changes, ng do check, ng after content init, ng after content checked, ng after view init, ng after view checked, ng on destroy. Now if I go and load my application, if I go and load my application, I will see that all these functions are invoked. If I go and open my console, I will see that, oh, okay. I'll go to center. In center component, I will enable app parent. You see, parent constructor got called, parent ng on init got called, parent ng do check. So all these functions are getting called automatically. Are we calling them? No. Even if we don't call, they are getting called. Now let us understand in what order they are being called and what is the importance of what life cycle. Let's understand that. If we want to understand the order, this is the order. Angular life cycle hooks. In this order, the the methods will be called. In this order, the methods will be called. First one is constructor. Constructor is gray because it is not from Angular, it is from TypeScript. First constructor will be called. After constructor, ng on changes. After ng on changes, ng on init. After ng on init, ng do check. After ng do check, if ng do check is getting called, for sure these four functions will be called. So you can say if ng do check is getting called, these four functions will be called for sure. So ng do check will call these four lifecycle methods: ng after content init, ng after content checked, ng after view init, ng after view checked, then ng on destroy. So in this order, the lifecycle methods will be invoked. First constructor, then ng on changes, then ng on init, then ng do check. Because of ng do check, four more functions will be triggered, and ng on destroy. Is it clear?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now we will understand what is the importance of each and every lifecycle method. The very first lifecycle method is, or we can say the very first method is constructor, though it is not considered as lifecycle method, but that will be called before anything else is invoked. That is the very first function that will be called for every component. Yeah, first thing is constructor. So what is constructor? What we should do in constructor? What we should not do in constructor? Constructor is invoked when Angular creates a component or directive by calling new on the class. Whenever we write a component in Angular, it looks like this. Class parent component implements something. So if it is a class, the object for this class is being created. Though we are not writing let obj is equal to new parent component. Though we are not doing this, somebody else is doing it for us. Who is doing? Angular is doing this for us. Parent component is a class. How to create object for parent component? New parent component. So this way, the object for parent component is created. Though we are not doing directly, indirectly, it is being done by Angular. So when Angular does that, when Angular creates one instance for this component, this constructor will be called. Yes. So we can say the constructor function gets called when Angular creates one instance for our component. Next, what logic we should write inside constructor? Inside constructor, we should initialize the class members. We should initialize the class members. And the second thing is dependency injection. We should add dependency injection and we should initialize the class members inside constructor. What we should do inside constructor?
Initialize the class members and dependency injection.
Yeah, initialize the class members and dependency injection. Let me give you one example. So Angular people, they recommend you always declare your variable here, but don't initialize like this. Keep it blank. Only declare here. And where we will initialize? We will initialize here. This dot a is equal to 10. This is best coding practice. Only declare your variables. A is a number. B is a number. This dot a is equal to 10. This dot b is equal to 20. Like this, we should declare the variables outside the constructor. The variables, all the variables should be declared here. They should be initialized here. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. The second use case is dependency injection. What do you mean by dependency injection? Okay. What is dependency injection in Angular? Suppose, suppose
Suppose
we have
we
one
have one
common
common
functionality
functionality
that is
that is
needed by
needed by
multiple
multiple
components.
components.
I'll
I'll
show
show
you.
you.
Give me a
Give me a
second.
second.
Angular
Angular
dependency
dependency
injection.
injection.
I'll show
I'll
you
show
one
you one
image.
image.
Suppose
Suppose
there is
there is
one
one
common
common
functionality
functionality
that is
that is
required
required
by
by
many
many
components.
components.
If the
If the
same
same
functionality
functionality
is
is
required
required
by
by
many
many
components,
components,
then
then
what we
what we
do,
do,
we
we
don't
don't
write
write
that
that
piece of
piece of
logic
logic
inside
inside
component.
component.
Rather, we
Rather, we
create a
create a
separate
separate
file,
file,
and
and
that
that
separate
separate
file is
file is
called
called
service.
service.
We
We
call
call
that
that
file
file
as
as
service.
service.
We
We
call
call
that
that
file as
file as
service,
service,
and that
and that
service
service
can be
can be
used
used
by
by
many
many
components.
components.
That
That
service
service
can be
can be
used
used
by
by
many
many
components.
components.
When when we
When we
create a
create a
service
service,
and
and
that
that
service
service we
we inject it
inject
to
it to
different
different
components,
components,
that is
that is
called
called
dependency
dependency
module, a
module, the
dependency
dependency
injection.
injection.
Okay,
Okay,
that is
that is
called
called
dependency
dependency
injection.
injection.
So
So
there are
there
a
are a
lot of
lot of
predefined
predefined
services we
services we
have.
have.
One of
One
the
of the
predefined
predefined
service
services
is
is
HTTP
HTTP
client.
client.
If you
If you
want to
want to
interact with
interact with
database,
database,
if we
if you
want to
want to
interact with
interact with database,
database, we
we
have to
have to
use
use
one
one
service.
service.
That
That
service
service
name
name
is
is
HTTP
HTTP
client.
client.
If I
If you
want
want
HTTP
HTTP
client
client
service
service
in my
in my
component,
component,
I will
I will
write
write
private
private
HTTP colon
colon
HTTP client.
client.
So when
So
we
when we
write
write
this,
this,
when we
when we
write
write
this,
this,
we are
we are
indirectly
indirectly
saying
saying
that
that
in
in
this
this component,
component, in this
in this
component,
component,
I
I
need
need
object for
object for
this
this
class.
class.
The
The
class name
class
is
name is
HTTP
HTTP
client.
client.
I
I
want one
want one
object
object
for
for
that
that
class.
class.
This HTTP
HTTP
client
client
is a
is a
service.
service.
That
That
service
service
is
is
injected to
injected
this
to this
component. The
component. The
component name is
component is
parent
parent
component.
component.
Now,
Now,
in your
in your
parent
parent
component,
component,
anywhere
anywhere
you can
you can
use this
use this
service
service
HTTP
HTTP
client.
client.
Does it
Does
make
it make
sense?
sense?
So when
So when
we
we
need
need
a
a
service
service
inside a
inside a
component,
component
to
to
make a
make a
service
service
available to
available
a
to a
component,
component,
we
we
write
write
something
something
like
like
this.
this.
We
We
inject that
inject that
service to
service
a
to a
component.
component.
That
That
concept is
concept is
called
called
dependency
dependency
injection.
injection.
We will
We
see
will
this
see this
concept
concept
after a
after a
day
day
or
or
two.
two.
But for now,
For now,
this is
this is
what
what
dependency
dependency
injection
injection is.
is. Do you
Do you
have any
have any
question
question
or we
or
are
we
able
are able
to
to
understand?
understand?
So this is something I can think like HTTP equal to new HTTP client, and in short, we are writing like this.
Yeah. So
So
when
when
we
we
create
create
the
the
instance
instance
of
of
our
our
own,
own,
we are
we are
responsible for
responsible for
that.
that.
Instead of
Instead of
we
we
creating
creating
the
the
instance of
instance of
HTTP
HTTP
client
client
class,
class,
we are
we are
asking
asking
Angular,
Angular,
hey
hey
Angular,
Angular,
create
create
one
one
instance for
instance for
HTTP
HTTP
client
client
class
class,
and give
and
me
give me
that
that
instance.
instance.
And there
And
is
there
one
is
more
one more
benefit we
benefit we
get when
get
we
when we
ask
ask
Angular to
Angular to
do
do it.
it. When we
When we
ask
ask
Angular
Angular
to
to
do
do
it,
it,
Angular will
Angular
make
will make
sure
sure
that
that
only
only
one
one
instance for
instance for
that
that
class is
class is
created
created
for
for
all the
all the
components.
components.
If
If
there are
there are
10
10
components,
components,
they are
they are
using
using
HTTP
HTTP
client. It
client.
will
It will
not
not
create
create
10
10
instances. It
instances.
will
It will
create
create
only one
only one
instance.
instance.
That is
That
called
is called
singleton,
singleton,
right?
right?
Another way is like instead of creating the objects inside the class, we'll initiate the instances at the constructor level itself.
No, we will never do. We will never write let obj equal to let ob is equal to new
Correct.
math, math
Yeah,
service. Suppose
correct.
math service is a service, we will
Mhm.
never create object like this. If
Correct,
we
correct.
create object like this, a new instance for this component will be created. If some other component will write this statement again, a new instance for that service will be created. So instead of creating object like this, we will say let math colon, not let private, math colon math service. Now we can say our component is injecting two services. One is HTTP client service, one is math service. So there are two services which are injected to our component. Our component name is parent component. Yeah, we will see this syntax very frequently after
And the
2 days.
left side HTTP small hand, that is the instant of the service. We can think,
Right.
right?
Sorry.
The
Correct.
HTTP small hand HTTP small math. These are the
Yeah,
instant of the service.
this is the object of
That's
this
class.
class.
Yeah.
Okay. So what did we understand? What is constructor? Constructor is a function which will be called for every component when Angular creates instance for a component. Then what we should do inside constructor? Initialize the class members and dependency injection. What we should not do, no business logic should be written in constructor. No business logic, no time consuming logic, no API call. All these things we should not do inside constructor. If we do those things inside constructor, it has limitations. So if you write business logic, if you write business logic inside constructor, if you write if you write 100 lines of code inside constructor, it will delay your component loading. There is one more problem. If we have many things inside constructor, writing unit testing for those lines is very difficult. Are we clear? What we are supposed to do inside constructor, what we are not supposed to do inside constructor?
Yes.
Can you please,
Yes.
Yes, sir.
what we should do inside constructor?
Class variable initialization and dependency injection.
Yes. What we
So
should
far,
not do?
No business logic should be built in
no time
constructor.
consuming logic, no API call, this all things.
Huh. Yeah. Don't write business logic. I'm not saying ki it will not work, it will work, but we should avoid doing that. We should avoid writing business logic, we should avoid writing API calls, we should avoid writing time consuming code inside constructor. Constructor. This function will be called before anything else is called, but this is not considered as lifecycle hook because it is not from Angular, it is from TypeScript. Next, as a lifecycle method, yes,
One
please.
question: how many times this constructor can be called? Is it only once in a lifetime, or
Only once.
okay? That is
Only
excellent.
once. Yeah, only once. Next, ng on changes. Ng on changes will not be invoked if the component doesn't have inputs array. Point one. The very first lifecycle method, the first lifecycle method that will be called after constructor is ng on changes. Ng on changes is the first lifecycle method that will be called. But ng on changes will not be invoked if the component doesn't have inputs array. If you look at here, do you think parent component has any input data? Anyone is passing data to parent component.
No, there is no input.
So we have ng on changes here. Do you think it will be called?
No in that case.
No, in that case, if you go and see, you will see after constructor directly on init is called. On changes is not called, right? Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Hmm. But if you look at child one component, child one component, suppose, suppose I will write on changes there. Let me write on changes. I'll write here ng on changes. This is child ng on changes. You will see child class on changes will be called. Child on changes is called. Why child ng on changes is called? Because it has input data. It is having input data.
Yeah, it is receiving data from parent.
Yes. So we can clearly say that ng on changes is the very first lifecycle method. And this lifecycle method will be only called for the components those take inputs from the parent component. Is it clear? Hmm?
Yes.
Yes.
This
Second,
input means that at the rate input and inputs, right? Not the HTML input.
no, input means not HTML input. This inputs array and at the rate input.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. And how frequently this ng on changes, this ng on changes is invoked every time there is a change in one of the input properties of the component. Every time there is a change, let's say child component has, let's say child component has four input properties. If anything is changing, child's ng on changes will be called. Say I'm changing parent component data from 10 to 11, but child 1 will be notified. Child 1 will be notified here. Now what I can do, I can comment the lifecycle methods now. I'll comment them. I'll comment them so that see. So there is a parent component, there is a child component. Child component is getting this data from parent. When parent component changes its data from 10 to 11, how child component is getting notified? Yes, child is getting notified because of ng on changes. You see, child ng on changes is called. When we change it to 12, child ng on changes gets called. 13, child ng on changes. Yes. So what is ng on changes life cycle? Ng on changes will not be invoked if the component doesn't have input property. And ng on changes is called only for the components those who have input properties. Ng on changes is invoked every time there is a change in one of the input properties of the component. If a component has 4 to 5 input properties, if any of the input property changes, then ng on changes will be called. Is it clear?
Yes, but one question. If in component we don't have the inputs property, then it will not call.
Yeah, we have seen that. It is not calling. First example.
Can you
Yes.
can you come again?
Means if component doesn't have input properties, then this
Huh.
event will not call, right?
No.
Yes, yes. It is used in child parent relation. We can say, right?
Huh.
Because in this case only we can use this in parent input properties.
Yes.
It is also invoked one times in the entire life cycle hood, right?
No, no.
No, every time, right? Multiple times.
When the data got changed,
Correct, correct,
not
correct.
at the time of page load.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Are we clear what is NG on changes and how frequently it will be called?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
What is the use of it? Can you tell me what is the use of it?
In case of any input, if you want to make any action, in those cases, it will be useful. Depends upon the functionality.
Yeah, but can you help me little more? When it will be useful?
Let's
Like
say I have a data.
account property changes, for
Suppose,
example.
suppose, for example, if I select a state, I need to fetch all the cities belonging to that state, right? In that scenario, if the user selects, suppose Andhra Pradesh, he needs to we need to fetch all the cities from that state. In the on changes method, we can call the list of cities method
Yeah,
and populate it in
yeah,
the user.
yeah, that is valid. Yeah, that's a valid use case. Yeah, what we can do in NG on changes, let me show you. NG on changes, NG on changes method can be used to keep an eye on parent component data change. If parent component's data changes, I should be notified and
Okay.
I should be able to understand what was the last value, what is the current value. Let me show you one proper example. See, when I write ng on changes, I can see that it is being called again and again and again. But what is the actual use case? Let me show you. Every time I change, ng on changes is called. But this is not the uh, best use case. Let me show you. ng on changes will take a parameter, my changes or changes, parent changes. It will take one object of data type simple changes. There is one predefined class called simple changes. It will ng on changes will be called with one object of type simple changes. Now if I print this console.log changes, changes is the variable name. It can be anything else also, my changes also. If you are getting confused, then my changes is a variable of data type simple changes. So if you see here, so when I change from 10 to 11, see this is on changes, inside on changes. It is saying that there is a variable called child1a. Child1a variable got changed. Okay, it got changed. Okay, ठीक है. What got changed? What was the last value? What is the current value? You will be able to get everything here. Okay, child1a is a simple change object. It has previous value 10, current value 11. Is it the first change? No, it is not the first change. If you change it to something else, again it will print which variable is changed, what was the previous value, what is the current value. So we will get everything here in ng on changes method. Is it clear? What is the use of ng on changes?
Yes.
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 Okay. Next
So
life
using
cycle.
using this in an online
Please go
form.
ahead.
So using this in an online form, we can track if a user changed something. I mean, what was the previous value and what is the current value?
Mm, no, not exactly. If there is no parent-child relationship, if
Okay,
parent
right.
is not passing the data from parent to child, if child is not taking input property, if all these structures are not followed, then we cannot say.
Correct.
Yeah. Until unless we see the code, we can't say. Hmm?
Mm-hmm.
For form, yes. If you want to understand what was the last value when I type SACHIN, I am typing Sachin. So after my every type, I want to capture what was the last value, what is the current value. For that, we have a different concept altogether. This is not about input box. This is about two components. There is a parent component, there is a child component. Child component was getting some value from parent component. Now the data value got changed. Now child component wants to understand, okay, what was the last value I was getting from my parent? What is the current value that I am getting from parent? If child component wants to keep an eye, then child component should write this method and John changes. Hmm?
Got it.
Yeah. The next life cycle method, or we can say second life cycle method, if we consider ng on changes is the first life cycle method, then after ng on changes, the next life cycle method that will be called is ng on init. Ng on init will be called immediately after ng on changes. For a component, if ng on changes is not called, then this will be the first life cycle method. Hope you understand, right? For parent, there is no for parent there is no ng on changes. If there is no ng on changes, after constructor directly ng on init will be called. Right? Got it now? Do you understand? For parent component, if I have ng on changes also, ng on init also, how the sequence will be? Hmm. First constructor will be called. After constructor, what will be called?
Yeah, on changes.
On change.
Yeah, never.
No on change, right?
Yes, no change.
It
Yeah,
doesn't have any
it
input
doesn't
property,
have
na?
input. If it
Right.
doesn't have any
Yes.
input, then no on change.
Huh. So after constructor, directly on init will be called, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. For parent, after constructor, direct on init will be called. There is no ng on changes for parent. Huh. What is ng on init and what is the use of it? Ng on init is the second life cycle method after ng on changes. Ng on init is invoked for every component. It is invoked for every component when a component gets initialized. Ng on init. Call this lifecycle method when a component gets initialized. Okay. When a component gets initialized, this lifecycle method will be called. This hook is called only once. It will be called one time. This will be called n number of times, but this will be called only once after the first ng on changes. Yes, ng on changes will be called 100 times. It doesn't mean after every on changes, on init will be called. No, only after the first ng on changes, ng on init will be called. If ng on changes is being called 10 times, it doesn't mean on init also will be called 10 times. It will be called only one time. We can see one example also. So in on init, if I write something here, child ng on init, this is my child constructor. We will see that child child constructor should be called child constructor. After child constructor, child on changes. After that, child on init. But when I change the value, constructor and on init will not be called again and again. Only on changes will be called on changes. Only child's on changes is called. Child's on init is not getting called. So it is clear that this hook is called only once after the first ng on changes, not after every on changes. Okay, we understood that. But what we should do here? What is the logic we should write inside ng on init method? Huh. Inside ng on init, we should write time consuming logic. Time consuming logic goes here. If you have very complex logic, 100 to 100 lines of code you want to execute, write it here. If you want to make a API call, fetch the data, then render the UI, do it here. This is the best place to make API call. Is it clear?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So ng on init will be called before on changes or after on changes.
After on changes.
Run changes.
Around.
If a component doesn't have on changes, then this will be the first method, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. On changes will be called 100 times or only one time?
One time.
Some number of
On
times,
changes,
100 times.
Any number of times
One
it can be
time.
called.
The input value changes.
But on init will be called only once, right?
One time. After first on changes.
Yeah. The logic we should write in on ng on init method.
API call.
Yeah. Yeah. We can say API call. We can say time consuming logic. Huh? If we have some logic, business logic. Business logic will be written in ng on init method. Why? Why not in ng on changes? If you write something in ng on changes, there is a chance that it will be called n number of times, right?
Yes.
Or it cannot be called also.
Yeah, it cannot be called also, because if there is no input property, it will not be called also, right?
Yes.
Isn't it? Yeah. So are we clear with ng on init?
Yes.
Hmm?
Yes.
Yeah. Next. The next lifecycle method is ng do check. ng do check is the next lifecycle method. What is ng do check and when it is called? ng do check is invoked when the change detector of the given component is invoked. ng do check is invoked when the change detector of the given component is invoked. What does it mean? See, our variable name is 10 here. Our variable value is 10 here. When I click on, see, it is 10. So when I click here, you see parent ng do check. Parent ng do check means do check lifecycle method gets called. If I increase the value by 1, parents do check is called. What do you mean by do check? What is happening? Actually, for every component, there is a person who is sitting and keeping an eye on all the variables of your component. And that person name is called change detector. We have someone called change detector. That change detector is keeping an eye on all the variables declared inside your component. Whenever something happens, whenever somebody clicks or somebody mouse overs or somebody does something, that change detector checks all the variable values. Okay, what was the last value of this variable? What is the current value of the variable? Is there any change? If there is any change, I will go and ask the browser to reload that component. So that is internally being done, though we do nothing, but internally there is someone available. That someone is called change detector. What is the job of change detector? We can call it as watchman also. That watchman keeps an eye on all the variables of our component. Whenever there is a change in the component, whenever the component needs to be repainted, reloaded, the change detector informs the browser to paint it, load it. Okay. So when I click here, the value gets changed to 12. It is happening because of change detector. And whenever the change detector runs, this ng do check method will be called. Did you get some idea at least? I know this lifecycle hook topic is not similar like the other topics that we have already discussed. You have to bear with me.
Oh, this is very interesting.
Is it interesting or boring?
No, very
Yes,
interesting.
It's
it's very
interesting.
interesting. It's similar to like asynchronous life cycle events, right?
Okay,
Applet life
okay.
cycle, yeah.
Good, good. If you're able to relate, I am happy.
But
Yeah.
sir, you did not change anything first time, just clicked outside. Then how
See,
watchman
is
fires?
not to see. If you look at here, there is some change. See, there is a focus, right?
Oh, focus
There
to
is a
blur.
focus. When I tab out, the focus goes, right?
Oh my God,
So
yes.
you see, a lot of things are happening. The focus goes, right? So the
Runs.
change detector is running. Huh? There is no data change, but
Yeah.
we
Events.
lost the focus, right?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yes, yes, I understand.
Change detector watches all these things also. Huh?
Yes. Thank you.
Change detector runs. So if something happens, this is one event. Do you know what is this event? We are in this input box. When I click here, what is the event that is being fired?
NG blur. Focus
EF
out, focus
NG
out.
blur. Yeah. Blur or
is
on blur. Yeah. Yeah. Blur word is enough. So
Yeah.
when blur event is fired, the watchman is going through all the variables and checking is there any change. No, there is no change. I don't have to print the page again. Huh?
Yeah.
But
Yes, I understand.
the detector is running. The change detector is running. When change detector is running, every time change detector, see, it is like we are here. The change detector is sleeping. When you trigger any event, the change detector wakes up and checks all the variables. Is there any change? Is there any change? Do I have to do anything? So whenever I click here, the change detector wakes up and checks all the variables, and change detector gets to know that, okay, there is no change. The previous value and current value are same. So I have to do nothing. I will ask browser, do nothing. When you click here, the change detector runs and change detector informs the browser, hey, there is a change. It was 12, now it is 13. Please paint it. And browser paints here 13.
So it will paint
Okay.
only that 13 or existing value also paint with same data.
Can you come again?
It will only paint 13 because it is the new value, or existing value also will be repainted with the existing data.
I didn't understand.
No, no, like 12 to 13 it happened, so 13 will be definitely repainted. But my
Hmm.
question is there was 20, there was other data, right? Those things will be
They will
also
not be
repainted.
repainted.
Same it is, okay.
Same. Only this portion will be repainted. Hmm. You can see here. For that, you can see here. Go to elements. Hmm. Okay, let me change from 13 to 14. 13 to 14. and you can notice whether this paragraph is being repainted or they are not being repainted. See,
Yes.
only one paragraph is repainted. Do you see? And if it is React, even the paragraph will not be repainted.
Only the value will
Only
be
the
represented.
only the value will be repainted.
So this is
That
not
is the
slow, sir.
beauty
But
of React.
I mean, this is not slow in that way. But we enjoy Angular. But this every time watcher is changing.
Yeah. That is why Angular is slower than React. We have watcher behind the screen who is watching, doing all these things. That concept is not there in React. You do something, we do something, you just click outside and the watcher is running here. The watcher is taking some time. And if you have hundreds of components and each component is having hundreds of variables, then you can imagine the watcher will take some time to scan all the variables and decide how many variables are changed, how many variables are not changed, what are the new values that has to be painted on the screen. You can imagine, right? It will take some time. Hmm?
Do you have something similar to simple check or do check?
No, in ng check we don't have simple change, but yes, we have. I will not say similar like that, but I'll say we have something. We have something. Yeah, we will discuss that also. We cannot relate with simple changes, but yes, we have something. Yeah. Now, uh, Angular has a default change detector who is watching your variables. If there is any change in your variable, Angular will run that change detector. But that Angular change detector will not be able to detect few changes also. That is also there. What are the changes Angular change detector will not be able to detect? If you push one new value to array, Angular change detector ignores that. Angular change detector thinks it's not a change. You have one array with three values. When you push fourth value, Angular change detector will consider it's the same array. Only a new value got added. The component will not be painted again. If you want to paint the component again, we have to write our own change detector. Even we can write our own change detector. We can decide how many times that change detector will run. Should it run uh, very frequently or should it run on a button click? We can write our own change detector and we can ask that change detector to run as and when we wish. That is also possible, and we will discuss all those things in tomorrow's session. Yeah. So, what is ng2 check? It is invoked when the change detector of the given component is invoked. If the change detector gets invoked, this lifecycle hook will be invoked. It allows us this ng2 check. It allows us to implement our own change detection algorithm. We can implement our own change detection algorithm also. Angular has one change detection algorithm which is running behind the screen without our knowledge, but we can have our own change detection algorithm also, and we can ask that change detector to run as and when we want. So it allows us to implement our own change detection algorithm for the given component. Yes, we can also write our own change detection algorithm. It is useful to detect and act upon the changes that cannot be detected by Angular on its own. Yes, there are few things. There are few things. Those changes will not be detected by Angular. Example, if you push a new data to array, if you add one extra field to object, if you delete one field from object, these are the few changes which Angular thinks there is no change because the address is not changing. Only thing is one extra value gets pushed to array. So that is not considered as change. For those kind of things, Angular change detection will not run. In that case, we can write our own change detection algorithm and we can trigger that algorithm as and when we need. I got a question.
Here I
The,
have a
the
question.
question is the yeah, I got a question from message. Let me answer that first.
Okay.
Uh, will the template get loaded after ng on init or before on init? The question is the HTML is ready before on init? No. You know what is the best lifecycle method to access DOM elements? The best lifecycle method to access DOM elements is ng after view init. There is a lifecycle method ng after view init. Once this lifecycle method is called, it means your HTML template is completely loaded. Once your HTML template is loaded, after that only this lifecycle method will be called. So if you want to write any DOM manipulation logic means document.getElement by ID ABC, you should always do it here. You should always do it here, not before this. If you do that before this, there is no guarantee that the HTML element is ready. Suppose I have one HTML element. I want to change its color through a JavaScript code. Where I should do? If I do it in constructor, will it work? No, because by the time constructor is getting called, your HTML elements are not ready in the browser. So there is a sequence. We should do DOM manipulation only in this lifecycle method. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. What is the next question?
Here you said like ng do check will not make any call if we have a element add any value added to the array, right? So in such cases, there is a chance like ng on changes method will get called, right?
No, ng on changes. Ng on changes. Let me tell you. Suppose there is a component called A. A is having one array with 10, 20. Then there is another component called B who is child of A.
Yeah,
It
in
is
B
having
also we are having the array. Okay.
Tata, we have Tata and Maruti. Now, suppose B component is pushing another data to B array only. Cars dot push, cars dot push Honda. Then B components do check should be called, right? Yes or no?
Yeah. Yes.
So B components do check will not be called because B component thinks that there is no change in my array.
Alright, okay. Suppose if the B component is using is consuming the A component's array values, in such
Hmm.
scenario, on changes method will get called, right?
On changes method will be called or not. Again, no. If do check is getting called here, then on changes will be called here. Okay. If the same array is given to C, if the same array is given to C, if do check is not getting called for B, then on changes will not be called for C also.
Okay, okay.
Because if B doesn't understand that there is a change, how B will notify C, hey, there is a change?
Okay, okay, okay. Got it, got it.
Huh?
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And one more question, sir. Like as you mentioned, like we can write our own change detection logic also. Like those things we need to write inside ng do check.
Yes.
Okay.
Either we can write in ng do check or we can Write that logic and we can call that logic on a button click.
On
We'll discuss tomorrow.
from ng do check only.
No, not on all these life cycle methods will be called before we do something. We are
Ah,
clicking a button means it is explicit,
it is
not life
DOM,
cycle method.
DOM render at that time. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. If user is clicking a button, something is happening, it is not life cycle. Life cycle method means
Already
before
happened.
user does something, these things are already happened, right?
But even after user interaction also it repeats, right? Some of the life cycle.
Some of the life cycle hooks are repeating like ng on changes.
Yeah.
Right. This is second time, third time, all these things will happen with user
Yeah.
interaction.
Yeah.
The first time it will happen automatically, right?
Correct.
It's as simple as like page load.
Yes, page load. As simple as page load. Huh? We can say page load also. Not page load, let's say component load. Huh?
For my example wise, I'm telling
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
true.
got
That's
it, got
true.
it.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, we have to understand, we have to remember.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. We can say on page load, we can say on component load. Anything is fine. Yes. So mostly today we discussed what is constructor, what is on init, what is on changes. These are the three lifecycle methods we discussed today. Do check we just started. We are yet to discuss few more things on do check. So from Monday we will continue from do check.
As for study class, I'm trying to uh, only one image will show that in output, and all images not showing.
Which one you are talking about?
We'll be talking about categories.
Yeah, degrees.
Okay, okay. What is the problem there?
Problem, code is not there anything, but it is only one image showing because all image is blank. So
Can you share your screen?
okay.
Can you share your screen?
না হচ্ছে।
Okay, show me the code. Okay, okay. No, you have to repeat it. No, it's not repeated. Okay, start from the categories component. Show me the categories component. Okay, you have different images. I can see. Go to categories HTML. Okay, okay. You have categories, category object dot image src. What is the problem? I'm not able to find out.
Go in categories
It looks.
compound.ts.
Mhm,
Yes.
mhm. It looks good to me.
Yeah,
Can you
copy the
see?
image URL and paste in URL.
Can you see if there is any URL?
Yes, yes. Yeah, second URL copy. Just URL, image URL, not the whole.
Can you check your browser if there is any error?
Go in browser.
Go to the browser and check if there is any error. Yeah, even the name is not coming. Only mobile and ABC, ABC, ABC. Why? Go to console.
Console tab.
Left side. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Three errors are there.
Recording
Go to
stopped.
console.
ng unit